What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Prayin and Slayin Podcast. My name is Aaron, your host, and today I have the awesome opportunity to share an episode with a longtime friend from the conservation space, Miss Kristen Kopehafer, and talk about an awesome buck that she took in Pennsylvania on a long-range shot with her rifle. And man, is she a wealth of knowledge in that conservation space. So looking forward to catching up with her. She's going to talk about the story. She's got a ton going on in the conservation space. Her and her husband have actually started a small business that's going well, and they've got some employees. We're going to learn about that and what it's like to be hunting in the great white crazy world of Pennsylvania, where maybe sometimes Sunday hunting isn't even allowed. So with that, guys, let's jump in with Kristen Kopehafer for an awesome episode to talk conservation and an awesome Pennsylvania buck hunting story. Well, Kristen, thank you so much for coming on the Prayin and Slayin Podcast. It's been a while since you and I have had a chance to connect. We've kind of been on each other's plates here different ways over probably the last 4 or 5 years now. And you killed an awesome deer. So I said, hey, we've got to get you on the podcast, catch up a little bit, and learn a little bit more about what makes Kristen Kristen.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me on here, Aaron. It's always good to catch up with old acquaintances and share hunting stories. So I'm looking forward to today.
Heck yeah. Well, let's learn a little bit about you. So I obviously, you and I met through the outdoors industry, and you're in the conservation space. I've run conservation programs for various businesses over the years, and you and I have had the chance to work together on trying to put together different partnerships and things like that. But beyond that, I don't know where Kristen starts before conservation. So I guess tell us a little bit about your growing up, what got you into hunting, were your family's hunters, like how'd all that work for you?
All right. Let me give you maybe the 30-second overview of who Kristen is and where Kristen came from, and then you can pick that apart any way you so choose.
You got it.
So I'm a Pennsylvanian by heart. I grew up in suburbia, Erie, Pennsylvania, where hunting was part of the culture. But in a very traditional kind of way, right? So my dad always hunted during the 2-week firearms deer season, which is like the holy grail of hunting in Pennsylvania. As I was growing up, my grandma's house served as deer camp, right? So we would all go to grandma's house, and in those traditional ways, the guys went hunting, the women stayed home, baked pies and cookies, and that's just how it was. That changed when I got to about a sophomore in high school. I had a biology teacher who was not your typical bio teacher. I think she was supposed to teach us a lot about cells and cellular biology, but she really didn't care what her curriculum was supposed to be. And we got a Wildlife 101 course in 10th grade, which was amazing. And it hooked me right out of the gate because she's the first one that taught me that hunting really is conservation and tied those two things together, right? Like I never thought of it in that way before, never knew what the North American model was before, none of that. And she had also introduced us to some NGOs that were in that hunting and conservation space as high schoolers. So that was really eye-opening and quite honestly set the trajectory for what would become my professional career and my personal passion. So from there, she said, hey, Kristen, you seem really interested in this, and Penn State has a wildlife and fisheries science degree. Maybe you ought to look into that. So long story short, I ended up at Penn State, got a wildlife and fisheries science degree. Also got an associate's in business while I was at it because it made sense to. Got to work in some pretty cool places like Yellowstone National Park. Ended up back in Pennsylvania working on the Allegheny National Forest, and then spent some time with some various NGOs doing a ton of habitat work and partnership work over the years, meeting some incredible people, doing some really fun hunts, and making a lot of memories. So that's the professional side of Kristen, right? And then, during all of this, as this was kind of unfolding, there's the personal side too, right? Like you just shared with me, you've got a new little gremlin in there, right? That just popped out, right. Which is always fun.
Yep.
And so I had 2 kids, and unfortunately, in 2016, I found myself widowed with a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. And I thought to myself, man, like I got to figure out how to raise these kids, and I want to keep hunting and fishing, central to who they are and how they grow up. So I made sure that stayed relevant in their lives. Made sure that they stayed hunting and fishing because my husband and I thought that was important. And then, a little bit of time went by, and in 2018, opened my heart back up again and met the man who's now my husband. And funny story there, there was a Facebook group that was all about people that like to work out because they like to hunt hard, right? And they know that if you sit in a tree stand and eat Little Debbie snacks and you weigh 300 pounds, you're probably not going to hunt very hard.
That's right.
Right. So there was this guy who was standing there, and there's a picture of him holding elk back straps. And I thought, man, who is this guy? So that's the introduction there. Long story short, he moved from Wyoming to Pennsylvania. He's since adopted both kids. We're now married, and we decided we were going to be business owners, and we have an exterior cleaning, mobile fleet wash, and Christmas light installation business here in PA. That's been an adventure in and of itself. Get up and going and get off the ground, but it's working, and we've got some employees. And then, of course, in the midst of all this, I found myself sitting on the board of commissioners for the Pennsylvania Game Commission. And then Warren has also started doing kind of a concierge service, if you will, where he works for a company called Rolling Bones Outdoors and really kind of matches the hunter to the hunt, like a dating service. It just says, hey, this is what you want to do. Here's how we can make it happen. And through that avenue, I got introduced to long range shooting. And then I think our conversation is going to go down that trail here in just a little bit.
Holy crap. Where do I start on unpacking all that, man? That's why the thing I love most about this podcast is like, this is a direction I didn't really know it was going to go. But the more conversations I had, I'm like, let's just get to know people.
Yeah.
And then we're all hunters, right? So like when I go to a trade show, it's kind of but that was my thought process, I guess, is every time you go to a trade show, you shake someone's hand, you hand them a product. It's usually centered around, a product or a business, whatever. But you never fail to have hundreds and hundreds of conversations over a weekend with different people, various walks of life. And we're all there because we all love hunting. And then this is going to be an awesome one. I can already tell. So there's so much I just learned about you that I didn't know. Yeah, if you don't mind, I took a lot of notes. I'm going to start at the top and kind of work my way down here. So, yeah, let's do it, man. So the thing going from your background, the thing that I really picked up on that I related to a lot was when you talked about your biology teacher. And I love that a high school biology teacher took the opportunity to say, hey, like there's one thing, like you said, to have cellular biology and how things work and how living things operate and whatever. But at the end of the day, like the ecosystems that, the cellular level is one thing, but like that next level is your ecosystems and how things operate. We're out in the woods as hunters. We just watch the world come to life every day. We watch it go to bed every night. And it's just, we get to enjoy, I don't know, the way things are just supposed to be, the way they were created, how, and just watch the world work as if we never were there, except we get to sit in a tree or whatever your hunting method is and just watch it all work and become a part of it. And to have a teacher do that is really, really cool. And I think for me growing up, I never, my dad, he had a few like hunting stories from high school. Like he had some buddies that hunted in high school that he went with their families and things, but ultimately he wasn't a hunter. My grandpa had a couple hunting stories, but same thing. He was like around when Iowa had its very first ever deer season. And so his only hunting story he's got is from one of those first couple of years where you could go out and hunt a deer. And that was kind of a cool thing. But he'd talk about, riding his horse to and from country school and, bringing his gun with him and he'd shoot rabbits and whatever on the way home. And that's what they'd have for dinner. And, so I think that was like kind of the inspiration. But the first, I think, spark for me was where I had we always, in science class, we always had from like elementary school where we lived at Dallas County Conservation in Iowa there, they had a Keene Conservation Area was like this little natural area you could go out to, but they always had this guy, Chris, I can't remember his last name right now, but anyway, I'll never forget the guy, but burned in my brain is Chris, this big, giant, burly man, giant beard. And he was kind of that whole, like, let's introduce kids to the wild and all these really cool things and how the ecosystems operate. And, he'd bring all the furs in so everybody could touch stuff and see stuff. And he'd talk about the way, ecosystems unfold from how the deer works and owls and owl pellet dissection and all this cool stuff. And that was, I think, really for me, it was like, that's where I knew, I really enjoy this outdoor stuff. It's really, really cool. But yeah, from a young age, having a teacher introduce you to that, it's kind of similar to my story, where I think that's really where my passion kind of got started. Like, I knew I wanted to go down that road somehow, always felt connected to it. And things just kind of clicked, like you said, without having a background. Like, obviously you grew up in Erie, PA, and it is like Pennsylvania, in my mind, is like the hunting capital of the United States. Like, I think you guys have, and correct me if you know the numbers on here, but like 1 million+ hunters just in the state of PA for hunting licenses.
We're down, like every state. I think we're at about 850,000 right now, but that's a lot of hunters.
That's a ton of hunters. Yeah, every business I've worked for, they're like, how do we get PA hunters on board with our product? Because if you can win PA and you can go over there or go to the Great American Outdoor Show, you're going to connect with a ton of hunters. So PA is a whole different ballgame. But I've talked to a few people now, and a couple ladies on the podcast where that's like the tradition. Like you said, you guys go out to hunting camp wherever that lives. Guys go hunting, ladies stay back. Like, did you ever get a chance to go out, or were you always kind of stuck in the house doing the traditional roles kind of program there?
So in the beginning, it was very traditional, right? Like, men, women, hunt, bake. It is what it is. And then this biology teacher, who obviously was a very outside the box thinker, I mean, no holds barred. She's like, this is dumb, because she was a hunter,
Yeah.
And made absolutely no qualms about people understanding her opinions on it. She's like, why don't you just ask your dad if he'll take you? And I was like, okay. And so I did. And he's like, yeah, let's go. And away we went. He took me to the shooting range, taught me how to shoot, ended up buying me my first gun, all the traditional steps that you would go through. But it never crossed his radar, I guess, as a guy, that he should invite his daughter along. But it was never that he intentionally excluded either. It just wasn't really thought of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's just, yeah, exactly. He had in his mind that things are just going to operate, and you just kind of go with status quo, and it goes. And that's kind of the story that I've heard from a lot of ladies too, in growing up in various states. And the first chance I had to personally kind of experience that, I guess, was we went to, we're a military family, so we travel all over with my wife's career now. But we went to a girl that she went to ROTC with, and to her family's Thanksgiving in Kentucky. We got invited out there, and we were living in Virginia. And I got to go out there. And that was the first time I kind of got to see that. Growing up in Iowa, and again, I was kind of the hunter in my family. So my dad started hunting when I was old enough to go shotgun hunting, because his business partner was very much a hunter. And so he would kind of go to hang out with the guys, and I would go with them and that kind of thing. So it kind of evolved, but it was always a dude thing. The ladies, if they came, and I don't think there was any really like lady hunters in the group, for whatever that's worth, but they usually would drive the trucks, and we'd do the Iowa shotgun drive thing, and the guys would all get out and walk and do the thing, and ladies would sometimes have lunch ready or whatever, and they'd drive the trucks for the most part, and that was kind of the thing. But when we went to Kentucky, I was 20 something, and I got to see that for the first time, where it was very much like the guy. We woke up Thanksgiving morning. The guys were like, or the dad of my wife's friend was like, "Hey man, like, you want to go rabbit hunting with us?" All the guys, every year we go out Thanksgiving morning, we do the rabbit hunt, and gals are going to stay back and cook and do that thing. And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." But that was the first time I ever got to see kind of that tradition play out. And it wasn't like, to your point, his daughter hunted. That's my wife's friend, but the next day we went, or the next day or two, I can't remember how long we were there. But anyway, we all went out and went deer hunting. But the girls sat in a double stand together. My wife, one of her first sons out there, and so it wasn't like it wasn't part of it. They weren't inviting the girls out, but they did have a traditional day where, like, hey, dudes go do this, ladies go do that, and it was just kind of the way things operated. And but yeah, it's very kind of an interesting thing, and it's different all over the place, I think, based off where you grew up.
Very different.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. And then the 2 weeks firearms season. So I was going to ask you that too. Are traditionally on your end then? Are you a firearms hunter or archery or both, or where are you at now?
So I would say both. I started out rifle hunting, which I think is how a lot of deer hunters start is rifle. Well, maybe not even so much anymore. But when I started hunting, crossbows weren't a thing yet, right? So I started with firearms. I hunt with a compound bow. I've hunted with crossbows. Like I've tried it all, done it all. And there's perks to everything, right? Like um, when you're hunting with a compound bow, especially when you're putting the time in over the summer, to just sending arrows down range and you're confident in your shot. Like there's a certain amount of pride that goes with that, right? And then the reality of it is there's certain phases of your life that you go through that you just don't have the time to dedicate to being as proficient as maybe you would like to be. And the cold hard truth is you can pick up a crossbow and with very, very little effort, you can be very competent with it. And still enjoy archery season. So, there have been some times in my life that I've shot deer with a crossbow, and I don't know that I feel like I'm any less of a hunter because I killed a deer with a crossbow. I mean, I've killed deer with inlines and like quote unquote, like I don't know if you. Let me rephrase this: you can't hunt with a crossbow and call yourself any less of an archery hunter than when you hunt with an inline and say I'm a muzzleloader hunter, right? Like it's evolution of the weapon, and it's opportunity for people to get out there and enjoy the resource and chase the passion that we all want to be a part of.
100%. I'm right there with you. I'd be lying if I say I don't enjoy watching the online little arguments people get into about who's hunting and who's more of a hunter than who and how this isn't whatever, like all this stuff with whether it's crossbows or guns versus bow or whatever it is.
Yeah.
However, at the end of the day, like you said, it's 2026, man. And if we weren't evolving on our end and our methods weren't getting better and better and more effective, like we just want to be human at the end of the day, right? Like that's kind of just what we do. We look at problems and how do you find a better solution and we make it happen. Then I haven't thought about this actually until today, but I watched a video of a guy hunting a bison. It was like a Native American hunt. And they were out there and the guy was sitting out there with a suppressed rifle leaning over the bed or, a flatbed tailgate. And bison were probably at 30, 40 yards. Guy made a headshot, dropped the one he wanted to drop. And that's the Native American version today of hunting a bison. That's something and I don't know where this was. I didn't even take the time to like check it out further, just watch the video. But the reality is there was a time when that was a whole nother thing just because of the way it was, right? And is anybody going to sit there and go, well, that's a little different? It's just a product of times changing and technologies. And bison were wiped out by guys that didn't have trucks, suppressed rifles, any of it. It was just we almost made an entire species of millions and millions and millions of animals go extinct with way less technology than we have now. But obviously there's the know-how behind it and conservation groups and the North American model of conservation and everything that's evolved too, to where we can have way more effective styles of hunting and methods of hunting. And we can also have just repeatable species populations that we can go back and get after every single year and not have to really think twice about it. So the whole point of getting in an argument about like how you got something, I like I said, I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy watching the occasional argument online or kind of reading the comment stream or whatever. But at the same time, it always does just strike you a little funny. Like why are we even bothered with that stuff? Just go out and enjoy it for what it is for you. And make it what it is for you and that experience. And hopefully you come home successful and put some meat in the freezer, man. Like that's really what it should be about.
Yeah, I can't agree more with that. I mean, I often find myself kind of scratching my head when I read those threads going, man, if I were a non-hunter, what would I think of this?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, hunters argue over some of the dumbest things.
Yeah. Then you said you got into long range shooting here recently too, or a handful of years back, whatever. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole, right? You start talking about rifle cartridges. It's the same method to take at the end of the day, but which bullet does it better and which cartridge does it better and yada, 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 yada. It's just like, holy cow, man, how far do you want to go on this rabbit hole? But at the end of the day, choose what you feel is best and what you hopefully feel confident in. And at the end of the day, make a good shot. And that's your job as a hunter. And you talk about proficiency too with the compound bow. And I've always kind of found that like, I don't know, a little interesting. I started with a compound bow. That's kind of how I got into it at like 14, I think. I went and bought my first bow. My first deer ever was with a bow. My biggest deer ever was my second deer, and I got that with a bow as well. And then I think my third year hunting is when I got into shotgun hunting in Iowa. So I started as a a bow hunter, got into shotgun later, and then now graduated, like you said, to long range rifles and things. But the method of proficiency is interesting because even as you go from a compound guy or your compound hunter, you get out there and the goal is to hit at 20 yards, hit a paper plate. That's it. And now one of our partners here at Light the Fire Outdoors and the Prayin and Slayin Podcast is Dead Nuts Outdoors, and their motto is hit the spot, not the dot. And it's true. You get out there on an animal, and if your goal is a paper plate, and you look at a rib cage, it's a paper plate. That arrow could go anywhere, but that arrow a few inches in any direction can kind of do different things, and that's just part of the hunter experience and making more effective shots and whatever. But my first experience where I felt like I actually got better with a bow was when I went to indoor league. So now it's like hit the dot, not the spot, right? It's not, no, don't aim here, aim at a friggin' dime. But that's where, to your point, the repetition and practice, and I think I kind of take it for granted a little bit, but that's where, from a compound bow perspective, I became a way better archer. But it's, going inside indoor league in Virginia, we got stationed there. I was just looking to kind of get reintegrated in the outdoor world. I had home was Iowa and had contacts there, had hunting ground there. I moved to a whole different state. Now I got to learn it all over again. Don't know where to go. Don't understand the system. Let me meet some hunters and hopefully get a learning curve, shortened for me. So I joined an indoor league. Mm-hmm. And anyway, the amount of reps over and over and over and over and over. But I think there's a balance. Practice like you play. Get out there, practice every shot angle you can. If you're going to be a tree stand hunter or a saddle hunter, practice from those angles. Ground hunter, whatever you're going to do, make sure you have a 1,000 reps in it. But then also like take some time and go just to a place where you're shooting the tightest group you possibly can, whether you're a gun hunter, whether you're a bow hunter, whatever that is. Those multiple reps, aiming at the smallest tiny little thing, that does translate to the form of everything kind of comes into play. Mm-hmm. I don't think about that a lot, but to your point, there's a lot of ways you can be a way more effective hunter than with a compound bow, because there's just so many more variables that the human introduces to that shot process than other methods of taking. Now there's human elements to all of it, but a rifle is a lot more effective if you make a little bit of a margin of error with what you do than a bow. So anyway, just I think there's that's a whole nother conversation probably of the whole rabbit hole we could go down there. But I'd encourage anybody that's a hunter, go join an indoor league, whether you're an archer or go to a gun range and join a gun range and practice shooting a spot over and over and over and over until you can get that group as tight as you possibly can, because that'll translate to that paper plate method later. But you're going to make you're going to learn to now you're going to go back to dead nuts. You're going to pick a spot, not the dot on that deer, and make that shot effective.
That's right.
Yeah. Whole nother rabbit hole there. So, but, and then you talked about, so you got into Penn State. So sounds like your biology teacher kind of led you down a rabbit hole that ultimately led you to say, hey, I want to pursue more knowledge and education in this and possibly a career. So you went to Penn State for, you said wildlife and fisheries.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Very cool. And I went to college because I was young, dumb, and didn't know any better. And I had a girlfriend that said, if you don't go to college, I'm going to break up with you. If I'm being flat honest, that's what happened. So I went to college. I absolutely hated it. I was doing community college on the side while I was working full time, and I had like a 2.3 GPA or something. Like, didn't know you could drop classes to avoid getting an F in them. So I just quit going to a couple, and it was just a disaster. And then fast forward a little bit, I got a little smarter, ended up joining the military, kind of a life reset moment for me. My wife, I started dating my wife, or who's my wife now, and her dad was in the military and her brother was in the military, and she was on a path to join. And anyway, did that, went to basic training, came back, and I decided I wanted to use my GI Bill, but I'm like, what do I actually want to do? And I knew I loved hunting and fishing. I'm like, let's do something in the outdoors. Had a mentor in the space that told me, man, if you like hunting, I would push you like park ranger path, like, or go, if you want to work outside, maybe go to parks and natural resources versus, going down the park or the game warden game, because that's kind of where I was kicking around those ideas. And I'm glad I did. I went the parks and natural resources side, which is a little bit different than, fisheries and wildlife. Same probably amount of biology at the end of the day, but different focus. Like, hey, let's learn about all these things so we can be interpreters at the end of the day, or give speeches about it to a college class that comes in or whatever. Way less of, how do we manage habitat and manage things, and how do we manage human resources in wild places was really more of my game. Yeah. But I love that. So what was like, when you got into that, what was your vision? Like, did you know exactly what you wanted to get into? Did you have a career field in mind, or was it just like, hey, I love doing stuff outside. I love hunting. Like, let's kind of explore this path.
So to be honest, I was not a model student in high school at all. And my parents were reasonably certain that I was going to fail out of college because I played the game called How Many Days in a Row Can I Skip in High School Without Caught? Right. So that was my level of commitment in high school. But it was because there was nothing there really that interests me, that tripped my trigger, that kept me, engaged and motivated other than this one teacher and her one class that I had sophomore year. But and I think I at least I like to think there's others out there like me that when they find something that clicks with them, they put a whole lot more oomph behind it, right? And so I started at Penn State Du Bois because they offer a 2-year wildlife tech program, and that program articulated really well into their bachelor's program. So I think that was like the soft launch that my parents said, "Hey, like let's give this one a shot because if you screw it up, at least we won't be screwing up too bad." Um, but I mean, I had dendrology my very first semester as a freshman. We were outside, we were learning trees, I mean, I was with the people that really clicked, and doing things that I really, really enjoyed doing. Had no idea what careers were available at that time, but I thought, man, if they're offering a major in it, there's got to be something. So let's rock and roll. And because I don't know what the heck else I'm going to do with my life. So that was kind of early on in college and just kind of getting my feet wet in the whole wildlife aspect of things.
That's awesome, man. I love how that started for you. There was a lot of kids. So when honestly, for me, like joining the military was like a hard reset, kind of got me back to just who I am at my core, and knew kind of what I could achieve if I just put my mind a little bit to something. And to be honest, like joining the military it's a harder decision to make to join than it is to make it successful in it. Like it's just they cookie cutter everything. You just have to learn how to process information while people are yelling at you at a high rate of intensity at the end of the day, right? So, but then getting back when I had a chance to say, hey, what does Aaron want to do? Not just go get some political science BS, 2-year degree and then move on to whatever's next. The Kirkwood Community College in Cedar Rapids, Iowa is where I went, and they had a Parks and Natural Resources degree, and that was just mind blowing to me. I was like, really? Like something that's right on? And everything about it was hands on. So it's an associate, that's something I learned, associate of science versus, or like applied science is what it was. And so it's a lot of hands on, exactly like you say, getting out there, walking around the woods in Iowa and saying, hey, learning tree identification and all these different things. And to your point, like I went from a 2.3 GPA or whatever that I entered that school with, walked out with a 4.0, but it's, to be flat honest, it's because I actually gave a crap about what I was learning. Yeah. I wanted to learn it. It was stuff I was already interested in. It was so easy. Like I remember like looking at guys that were getting bad grades and going, how do you like even struggle with this, dude? Like this is the easiest stuff you could possibly learn, but I think the level of give a crap was a little different, for some guys. And I was a little older at that time. I was 21 than all the 18-year-olds that were there fresh out of high school and all that. But even then, like, fast forwarding a few years and getting my first full-time park ranger gig in Virginia there. I remember one of the cooler things for me was, well, it's Virginia. So it's a high military, big military population over there on the coast. And a lot of kids, have aspirations to join one branch or another. But working in parks, you get a lot of high school kids during the summer season. You get a lot of guys that maybe just graduate and they're kind of in limbo between, they don't know what they want to do. So, always coaching them. If they said they wanted to be a Marine, I'd try convincing them they needed to go to the Air Force instead. But if that didn't work, it's like, hey, don't go to college until you know what you want to go for, man, because it's just not worth it. You're going to spend a lot of money, waste a lot of time. And at the end of the day, like I just knew my experience. So I was like, try to go for something you want to be in. And yeah, I just, the applied or the Parks and Natural Resources program, I couldn't scream highly enough about. It was just such a cool thing. And everything you did was like just a little bit more advanced version of what you already like to go do for your hobby. And that was just the coolest thing. And now you can walk away with a degree in it. And then that's got its own, like you said, kind of your own career path and what different job opportunities there. It's super cool. And then did you say at the end, I missed a little bit. Did you say that you got a business degree on top of your parks or your fisheries and wildlife degree?
Yeah, I tacked on. It was just an associate's degree, but I figured out the credits that I needed for it, and thought, since I still don't 100% know what it is that I want to do, you can't ever really go wrong with having a little bit of a business background.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's really cool because that's when the park I worked at, because you had to have like an internship, you got paid to do it, but you had to work at a park or work in a natural area or whatever it was in Iowa for part of this the associate degree that I got. And the park ranger at Palisades Kepler State Park in Iowa, he awesome dude, one of my mentors to this day for a lot of things, but he had an MBA, and he told me, man, if you want to get your bachelor's, is like kind of, you got anything you're ever going to need to know, honestly, in the outdoors world, or as far as how to kind of day-to-day operate a park, like you've already learned it, go get a business degree. Because he said, when you sit in my chair and I have guys like you out here running the day-to-day ops, and I've got to sit in the office and manage numbers and crunch budgets and all this stuff, he said, go get a business degree. Mm-hmm. So my bachelor's degree is in business as well. And that was cool to hear that piece, because I really think they marry together. But yeah, just like anything, if there's politics involved, there's money involved. Where there's money involved, there's a business involved. So, yeah, good combo there. So I thought that was kind of cool too, that you had your business degree in that. Well, and there's a lot. There's, like I said, I got more notes here, I think, than I know what to do. I don't leave myself enough paper to do this. So you got your business degree. Sounds like you had a crazy roll of life jumping after that, and then. If you don't mind kind of going to your life as it is now is kind of where I want to jump to.
Yeah.
And so you met your now husband, and there's a bunch of things that like connecting dots over here. So one, you said he was affiliated with and works with Rolling Bones Outfitters. Is that out of South Dakota?
It is. Yep.
Okay, awesome. I found out about those guys through a buddy of mine, Kenny Hendricks, and I didn't know. At the time I was in sales, so I was looking for dealers for different products and things, and found out about Rolling Bones Outfitters. And my first phone call to them, it threw me for a loop, because they weren't your traditional like pro shop, and they were talking to me more about like the outfitter side of things. And so I really didn't know exactly what they do. So I guess explain that a little more, if you don't mind. Like, sounds like a pretty cool system. So they connect hunters to whatever desire they have, and what do they do to kind of set a success path for them, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting business model. There's a couple different kind of hunt concierge services, if you will, out there. But what I really like about this one is they have a book of vetted outfitters, right? Because anybody that's spent any time in this space and has hunted or knows people that have hunted have either had a terrible experience with an outfitter, or they know somebody that had a terrible experience with an outfitter, right? And it may not be that particular outfitter was a bad outfitter. It may just be that hunter had completely different expectations, right? So one of the things that I like about, they've got 400 some vetted outfitters, and then each one of those outfitters has kind of their little catalog. So if I looked at you and said, Aaron, what is it that you want to do? And you say, hey, like, I'd really like to, elk hunt. Okay. There's a number of different states where you can go elk hunting, right? You can do over the counter in a couple places. There's obviously trophy units that are going to take a lot of points and a lot of years of applying. And so what this catalog will do if you say to me, look, I get all that, but sometime in the next 5 years, I want to go and I want to kill a bull with my bow. Okay, so I'm going to take all those outfitters. I'm going to find the ones that have bull tags available within a 5-year window that we can start planning for. So boom, 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 that's going to knock a bunch of people out, right? And then from there, I can say, okay, what kind of hunt are you looking for? And you say, I want to go backcountry. I want to ride a horse in. I want to sleep on the ground in a wall tent, whatever. And put all those parameters in there, put a budget in there, and really kind of get that laser focus down to the outfitters that can meet that expectation that you have as a hunter. As opposed to you going to the Great American Outdoor Show, for instance, wandering up and down the halls, going home with a bag full of brochures and business cards from every outfitter that you stopped and talked to, and you go, man, like I don't even know where to start. So it really narrows all of that down and helps you get the experience that you want as a hunter. And for me, that's huge because I love experiences, but I don't know how to I wouldn't know who to hire to be a mountain lion guide or an antelope guide or anything like that, or even if I wanted to DIY antelope in Wyoming, how do I go about where can I go antelope hunting next year versus where would I need maybe 2 years worth of points. So all that stuff gets put into what's called your dashboard. And you put your credit card on file, say these are the animals I want to apply for in these states. They will handle that for you. You'll never miss a deadline application. And then you can, like I said, you can literally go through their catalog book and map out your hunts so that you have a hunt plan, from now for 10, 15 years from now and have an idea of where it is that you're going. So that when I saw that there was that level of really kind of white glove service to help people maximize the amount of time that they can spend having adventures, I was like, man, that is amazing. What a cool concept.
No, that's incredible. Yeah. And I guess, being a military family here, like to know, even to have just that level up of education on where you're going next and what opportunities are there. And I'm just, it's probably a penny pincher part of me, to be honest. Like I'm more of a hey, let me figure it out and then try to do it myself kind of thing. And versus outfitters, that was a little bit more foreign to me. But then, because even going to Montana, it was like we got stationed there. I about did a backflip, but I have Onyx maps and very quickly learned that, Montana is just a place, to be flat honest. Like you could live there probably your whole life and never hunt you couldn't even try to hunt, I don't think, every piece of public land that's there. It's that different than Iowa, for example. It's like less than 2% of the state is public. And of that, like how much of it can you actually hunt? So a lot of it is private land hunting, and how do you navigate that system? And then to come here to Texas, sounds like if Rolling Bones doesn't, they need to figure it out. Get a Texas book of hunting, because it's same thing. Learned we were coming to Texas for this 1 year deal. We're down here, and I was like, cool, it's over hunting season. This is going to be awesome. And this is a whole different world down here than what if you don't have a big checkbook, good luck. And then, but to your point though, the vetted outfitter thing is a huge deal, and it doesn't matter where you go. But I'll just use Texas as an example. There's so many, I guess I'll call them outfitters for lack of everything else that they can be classified as. But there's so many outfitters. But then you look at you can join these Texas budget hunts or Texas whatever different forums on Facebook and get on there. And every day there's 20 people posting the same animal, and they've got these hunts available and yada yada yada. And you get on there, and then you go to any of these websites of all these ranches, and it's like, hey, pick your price list. It's literally and then the experience. So it's exactly kind of what you said is where I'm at. I'm like, I want to go somewhere where I feel like I'm actually hunting, and I'm not trying to knock what goes on down here, but it's a whole different style. It's a whole different ball game. And you can have hunts, no joke, that can go on 40 acres, and there's 75 animals on 40 acres that you can, hunt I used air quotes there. Again, trying not to take that away from people that's what they like to go do. But, in my reality, I'm like, hey, where's that 20,000 acre ranch that I'm trying to hunt this one specific thing? And I've got to, navigate the property to make it happen. And that's kind of where my head's at.
Sure.
But then I got a chance to go on a high fence ranch hunt. That's a 4,000 acre ranch, about 3 hours from where we're at. And I got to experience it a little bit, where you're sitting in a blind, and just because you're in a blind doesn't mean that animal that you're even there for. I was there for 3 days. And didn't even get to see the animals that I was actually after, which was kind of crazy, because you got feeders. They're roughly 100 yards from you. You're kind of just thinking, okay, just wait here and shoot. And hey, it just doesn't happen. So there is an element to it. But it was also kind of cool to just see how it all plays out, because it is relatively wild. The animals still do what they want to do. But it's like you said, it's a matter of the experience you want to have. But just getting to spend some time with my buddy Ken up there that runs the hunt operations for that ranch, he was explaining to me, on Texas's side, that vetted outfitter piece would be very valuable, because the experience is there's a bunch of different, like, how you get linked up with a hunt. It may be somebody that, like, just you or me that just knows somebody that has a ranch. I can go post on Facebook, and I know you've got, 5 elk you want to take this year and 2 deer and whatever. And I can go be a middleman for you, collect the commission, and I just connect you to the ranch, and I have actually nothing to do with it. So that's one piece of it. But there's another type of hunting where there's ranches that have high fences that have 0 animals on them all year. They have some feeders and they operate them that way. But what they'll do is they'll hire a person like you or me to be the booker, and they'll book, let's say 5 oryx hunts, 3 elk hunts, a red stag hunt, and an oddad hunt for the year. Well, then the ranch owner now connects with a business manager and says, hey, I need you to go buy these animals for me from ranches around the state. They load them up on a trailer, they ship them in, they let them go, and then you literally show up and shoot that animal that you wanted to hunt. So your experience can be wildly different if you don't know what you're looking for, I guess is what and Texas is just a good example. There's so much going on here that if you don't have someone to navigate that, like, I'm sitting over here. I've hunted twice. I hunted once on some Fort Hood ground in my saddle, which was cool because I felt like I actually just got to go do something that, hey, I may see a deer today, I may not, but it kind of felt more like hunting. I've got to do the high ranch or high fence thing, and that was a good experience. So you got to see a ton of cool animals and just kind of watch how it all plays out and stuff. But ultimately didn't come home with something, so it's not a guarantee either. But I'm also sitting over here kind of frustrated, like, okay, we're counting down now. We've got like 3 months left, and I don't have any extra meat in the freezer or trophies on the wall. So maybe my Texas experience will be maybe another year coming. I'll come back and try to figure something out, but a lot more planning to go into it. So yeah, to have that level of, and then I've worked for businesses where I run and operate an outfitter program. And then, you think you've got all these outfitters at your fingertips for other things. They're trying to book opportunities for employees of the company or grassroots team members and things like that. And then you start actually digging in and you start looking at some websites and you're like, I don't know if I'd send someone there because I haven't been there, but I'm kind of not getting a good vibe. But then to know that there's companies out there that can, hey, you know the experience you're going to get. There's some confidence in that. Probably well worth the time to link up with a company like that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing. But then you've got you found your man off a picture online on a workout forum holding up some back straps.
Yeah, how redneck is that?
That's like the best thing I've ever heard, to be flat honest. That's so cool. And so what, like legit, it was just like, what'd you do? Did you message him on Facebook, or how did this whole play out?
Yeah, so we were both in this one Facebook group, and he was actually one of the admins. And somebody that I knew here in Pennsylvania had put me in that group because they knew that I, like to work out and like to hunt. And he also knew Warren, unbeknownst of what he was, blossoming there when he put me in that group. But then I kind of just was messaging him and I was like, hey, what do you like to do? Obviously you like to hunt, blah, blah, blah. And so then we the rest is history, man. Like, it all started with a picture of him holding elk back straps. Can you believe that?
That's so cool. I hope you have that framed in your house somewhere. Like, that would be the best.
We should, but we don't. Yeah.
It's like hanging over your head more.
Yeah.
That'd be so awesome. So as far as you got him, this is actually surprising to me a little bit. You got him to move from Wyoming to Pennsylvania?
I did.
That's impressive.
That sounds backwards, right?
Yeah, it does. I figured you'd probably go west. Yeah.
Right. But at that time, if it was just me, I probably would have went.
Sure.
2 young kids that had just recently lost their dad, I was not willing to move them 1,800 miles away. And he understood that. So he kept he's got a house and some horses out in Wyoming. He kept that house. We're renting it out. And we will have every intention on moving back there someday. Our oldest is now a senior in high school. I have no idea how she got to be a senior in high school already, but she's a senior in high school. And then the youngest is a sophomore. So we're, going to get them through high school. And then depending on how business things go, et cetera, we'll end up back in Wyoming at some point.
Very cool. Well, so yeah, talk about the business, or I guess let's back up a little step. For workouts, I've got a couple people. I've had Joel Rather from Hike Harvest on a couple of times, and he's a big functional movement kind of guy, trains professional athletes, and I like kind of I'd say like the minute or little little movements you need to do to make your body actually functionally strong versus just deadlift, bench press, squat. I guess what kind of workout routine do you and your husband try to stick to stay fit for hunting?
So this time of year when it is like the Arctic tundra in Pennsylvania and we don't like to get outside much because everything is white and frozen and cold, we belong to our local YMCA and we do spin class Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Okay.
And ironically enough, our spin instructor is also our marketing and media guy for our business. And he's like a semi-pro biker, so he puts on just an absolute beatdown of a class at 5 a.m. every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then in between that, I found a program out there called Mountain Tough. I don't know if you've seen that program or not, but that program is absolutely fantastic. I cannot speak highly enough about that program. Love that program. I mean, there's so much in there from workouts to stretching to meditation to the spiritual side of things. Like they literally cover it all and they do it from a standpoint of, being functional in the mountains. Very
cool. I had no idea it had, I guess, multiple layers or levels to it, like you said, spiritual, meditation, all that good stuff. Because I look at Mountain Tough and just generically off the top of my head, I'd say, okay, it's a CrossFit group, catered to the hunting community, and that's very ignorant of me because I have never really looked into it. I think actually, I take that back. I think I downloaded when I was in Montana. I did download. They had some like free workouts that they were posting on their Facebook pages, and I did download some of those, and I did a couple on base. Now that I think about it, they had some like ruck challenge thing where like you put a weighted pack and you graduate your weight and then you do like sprints and these different things with it. I do remember doing that, but beyond that, in my mind, it's always just been kind of like a CrossFit program. So to know that there's other layers out there too, that's actually really cool. Cause I think that's, the tailoring it all out, putting yourself out in the woods now or on the side of a mountain somewhere, like there's just as much of a spiritual and mental and everything else game that goes on out there or experience that goes on out there than just being able to, have the quads you need to get up the mountain. Right. It's, when the quads start burning, your brain turns on. It says, hey, I've got to keep going one more step. And then beyond that, then you achieve that first peak or whatever, and you get to the spot where you're going, all of a sudden your spiritual side kicks in and you're just taking it everything in and enjoying the experience. That's really neat. I didn't realize they had that many elements to it. Yeah. I've been on that program now for a couple years, and it has grown tremendously over the couple years that I've been in there. And they have everything from, like, if you don't even want to think about it, daily workouts that are, 30 to 45 minutes. It's a video and you follow along, to you can download a PDF and go to the gym and do your thing, and everything in between. So it literally, like, if you can't find something in there that will work for you, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe hunting's not for you. Maybe fit the hunt is not for you. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then the business owner side, so obviously you're an entrepreneur. Like, how did that get kicked off? So you went down hey, let's get into the I guess outdoors industry or the outdoors world. Let's go to the wildlife fisheries sector, and now you're a business owner. Like, what led you to that path? Was that a combo with you and your husband, or was that one or the other, and the other one followed along, or how'd that work? Yeah, so that was one of those parameters of, if I'm going to leave my mountains and my elk hunting behind and move to Pennsylvania, nobody's going to tell me what I'm worth. I'm going to start my own business. And I was like, okay. So in my naive ways, I'm like, well, what could possibly go wrong with trying to, mesh this family thing together and start a business at the same time? It sounds like a great idea, right? So somehow we made it through all that. Absolutely not all rainbows and unicorns. I cannot sit here and tell you it's been a smooth ride by any stretch of the imagination, but we have learned a lot. We've grown a ton. He worked for a county entity in Wyoming when he was there, did a lot of road maintenance, construction, stuff like that. And so he's a handy guy. He knows that, like, he can identify a problem and figure it out. So he said, look, when I get there, I'm just going to find a niche that needs filled, and I'm going to fill it. So he came here and realized that, in Pennsylvania, where it's hot and humid in the summertime,
We have a lot of houses that turn green and grow moss on the roofs, and there's a very real need for house washing, roof treatments. There's also a need for mobile fleet washing. So that was kind of our two big avenues is exterior cleaning and mobile fleet washing.
In the woods or on the water, it's the small details that dictate success or failure. A ruined diaphragm call or a lost fly isn't just a nuisance, it's a blown opportunity. You spend thousands on the hunt, don't lose it because you didn't protect your tools. Puck Outdoors has solved this with their 100% made in the USA modular twist lock storage systems. For hunters, the Puck keeps your elk and turkey mouth calls protected, organized, and dry, and ready to run. No more warped reeds, searching through pockets, junk drawers, or the truck floorboards. For fishermen, the Fishing Puck features a magnetic tray and 4 modular compartments to keep your hooks, flies, and weights locked down in exactly where you need them. It's compact, it's rugged, and it's built to keep your most critical gear in peak condition season after season. The best part is they fit right in your pocket, your bino harness, or your fishing vest. Don't let poor organization be the reason you come home empty-handed. Go to puckoutdoors.com and use code Prayin and Slayin to get yours. That's code Prayin and Slayin to save 10%. Protect your calls, secure your tackle. Puck in, pack out. We've all been there. You're 6 hours into a sit and the buck you're after is nowhere in sight. Your knees are absolutely barking against the bark of that tree. Most hunters just suck it up until they can't take it anymore, and then they head for the truck. But you can't fill a tag from the couch. Comfort isn't a luxury, it's a tactical advantage that keeps you in the game longer. That's why you need the knee bag by Light to Fire Outdoors. This isn't some cheap foam pad. It's a patent-pending bead-filled design that actually molds to your knees and supports your hips. It's built from ultra-tough, weatherproof Cordura. It won't soak up water or gain weight when the weather turns sideways. It features padded wings that cradle your knees and even has MOLLE attachments for your thermocell or other pouches and gear. It's 100% made in the USA, handmade by veterans, so you know you're supporting an awesome cause every single time you get in the tree. The best part, it's a multi-season tool. Strap it to your body for saddle hunting or mount it to the tree trunk as a knee pad. Or when rifle season hits, turn it sideways. It becomes a rock-solid 15-inch tree-mounted shooting bag for those precision shots out of a saddle. Whether you want coyote tan or mossy oak bottomland, this is gear that evolves with your hunt. Stop fighting your gear and start focusing on the hunt. Get yours at www.prayinandslayin.com and use my code PRAYIN10 to get free shipping on your order. You can also hit the link in the show notes. The knee bag, comfort evolved. Stay steady, stay ready. This episode is powered by Dead Nuts Outdoors, makers of the most lifelike, lightweight, and weatherproof 2D archery targets in the world. That's right, I said 2D. We're talking full-size animals that bring the hunt to your backyard. Whether you're dialing in before the season or just burning daylight with your bow, Dead Nuts Targets makes practicing fun, training on full-size animals to ensure every rep in the backyard converts to success on your trips to the field. Built to last, easy to haul, compatible with any backstop, and 100% made in the USA, Dead Nuts Outdoors is a proud supporter of our veterans, investing in conservation and rooted in building a better, more confident community of hunters every step of the way. They are proud supporters of the Prayin and Slayin Podcast Network, and you can get 10% off your Dead Nuts targets by using the code Prayin and Slayin at checkout. That's Prayin and Slayin at your checkout or visiting the link in the show notes. Dead Nuts is helping us all hit the spot, not the dot. Hit it, Dead Nuts. Now, let's get back to the episode.
And then as that grew, and we ended up with employees that we wanted to keep busier longer, right? Because that's obviously fairly seasonal in Pennsylvania. We added Christmas light installation here a couple years ago onto the business as well, and have had honestly quite a bit of fun with Christmas light installations.
That's very cool. And what's the name of your business, if you don't mind me asking?
Called Cope Services, KOPE Services.
Cope. Awesome. We'll be sure to plug it. You guys have a website?
We do. Copeservices.net, I think, is what it is.
We'll find that. We'll make sure that's in the show notes for people to check out. If you're listening in the Pennsylvania area, I know we have actually quite a few Pennsylvania listeners. If you need any of those things done, go check out Cope Services. Good place
Absolutely.
to, sounds like, get it done, and started in a cool place. I like that. He kind of took that life change opportunity to jump into something and say, hey, I'm gonna tackle this for myself. And I relate to that a little bit. I left my over a decade long career at one company about a year and a half ago. And I just took that opportunity to say, hey, first of all, I'm going to go spend some time and actually hunt, because I haven't had time to do that in like 10 years. So
Yep.
I took like 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks left of daycare before little man came home with me full time, and I took full advantage of that. Was in the tree every single day. Didn't kill a single deer in Maryland, but hey, that's just how it works sometimes.
Yep.
But got to spend a lot of time out there with my thoughts and everything else. And then I was like, hey, I've had this LLC for a long time, and I really haven't had the bandwidth, I guess, to even really think about what I want to do with it. So the 2 weeks in the tree, it's probably a good thing I didn't see any deer, because it kept me like just freelance, just thoughts rolling, and how
Yeah.
could I do this? This podcast was something I wanted to sink a lot more energy into. And but to that same point, it's like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it in exactly the direction I want to go, and I'm going to tackle it the way I want to tackle it, and just let it do its organic thing. And it's been a hell of a year and a half. Like, I wouldn't have told you any of it would have gone the way it has, when I started, day one. But yeah, it's been a pretty incredible journey. So I really admire that about your guy, being able to just take that opportunity to say, hey, let's do something a little different. I'm going to work for myself and grow something on your own, and just have that opportunity to build it from the ground up is really, really cool. Yeah, to have employees is a whole nother ball game. So you got responsibility beyond just yourself now, which is a whole nother level. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty sweet. Very, very cool. Well, then, okay, so you're business owners. You and I met, though. Like I said, I don't know exactly when we crossed paths, but I'm guessing probably about 4 years ago. It was in the nonprofit space, the conservation group space. Tell me about that. Like, how's your journey been in there? Because I know you've had a big background in that. Has that always been alongside the business owner thing? Because I think at the time you were working full time in that space.
Yeah, I was. I was working full time in that space as a biologist for a couple different NGOs, um, overseeing some projects on national forests, overseeing some private land projects, doing a lot of volunteer based work, with volunteers, and got into the fundraising side of things. Um, Got to meet some people that I've gone on some pretty cool turkey hunts with, some deer hunts with, which is a whole other rabbit trail we could go down. But yeah, that was my time in that space, and it was so much fun. Like I said, you meet the salt of the earth people, when you do that, and you're engaging with people and their passions literally on a daily basis. And if so, in 2019, then when I was still working full time in the NGO arena, I was approached to throw my hat in the ring to become a commissioner for the Pennsylvania Game Commission, and so I was appointed then in late 2019, for my area, and then that honestly is what made kind of the transition to the business side of things a little bit more manageable, because if I didn't have something conservation related to do, I'd probably go nuts, you know.
Yeah,
So I fill that void, if you will, with talking to hunters, talking to PGC staff, and fulfilling that role as a commissioner for the largest state agency in the country, which comes with its own can of worms that gets opened.
for sure. And so I guess tell me a little bit. So it's yeah, because you and I got linked up on the fundraising side. So I understand that side of the business well. I understand the volunteer side pretty well. All that. So I guess now moving into like a state role, a Pennsylvania Game Commission, what does that look like? Like, what are your responsibilities? How does it work? And how's that different than, I guess, kind of working on your standard conservation organization? I guess I'll call it that.
Sure. So in Pennsylvania, our board of commissioners is comprised of 9 individuals, that each represent a certain area of the state. So I'm District 1, which is the northwest corner of Pennsylvania. And they are 4-year appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate positions, right? So we talked earlier about money, politics, conservation. Like, whether you like it or not, those three are intertwined more than any of us would like to see, but that's the reality of what we're living in. So as a commissioner, we meet quarterly in Harrisburg, which is obviously the capital of Pennsylvania. We set seasons and bag limits. So this is the voluntary position, and I like to make sure that people understand, like, this role is not paid, but we get yelled at a lot, right? So folks that aren't happy about what day deer season opens in Pennsylvania, yell at me. Or people that love it, call me up and say, man, what a great opportunity. Thank you. And then just kind of balancing that dichotomy of hunters are passionate. I mean, there is absolutely no other way to put it. They're passionate. So that's kind of what I remind myself, because I talk to a lot of people all the time that are really, really happy or really, really mad about a certain decision, regulation that was put in place. And you just, at the end of the day, you got to take a step back and say, what can we do that will maximize opportunity for the most people that our resource can sustain, and go that route.
That's awesome. And I've been in this, headspace before. I think maybe as I get older, the maturity of a hunter, kind of that whole rigmarole, it sits a little different with me than it used to. And I think there's probably a lot of hunters that relate to what I'm about to say, but like in your shoes, you're a person that people call when they don't like something, when they do like something, when, regulations that need to be changed, or maybe when they hear feedback, something might be coming down the pipe, there's an opportunity to get a hold of a representative or somebody that you can hopefully, pass the feedback along and maybe make a difference. Like, how effective, I'll ask a couple questions here. I guess, is there a demographic that you feel, and then by demographic, I'm specifically referring maybe to age range, and maybe you don't ask those questions. Is there a certain demographic of people, maybe probably age is what sticks out in my head, that you get calls from guys and gals that are 40 up, or maybe under 40, that care so much about what's going on. They've been in the system a long time. They know how things want to operate in Pennsylvania from a hunter's perspective. That is it more feedback from one side, maybe older generations or younger, or is it kind of a mixed bag on who you get feedback from?
I would say it's kind of a mixed bag, with the understanding that, especially politically, people don't generally reach out when they're happy, right? Like, when was the last time that you called or emailed your senator or your rep and said, thanks for voting on blah?
Never.
Exactly. So that right there is why I take a lot of time when I'm out in the community. I had a circle of guys around me at the gym here a couple weeks ago, kind of going over some stuff that we had going on in Pennsylvania, and right before our voting meeting, and kind of wanted to hash some things out personally with guys that are hunters, right? Because the feedback that we get, whether it's emails or Facebook messages or whatever it happens to be, isn't always positive. And if I leaned all on the stuff that just came in organically, I'd be missing a lot. So finding different ways to engage with broader audiences is tricky but critical.
Yeah, for sure. And then I guess on that note too, so are you guys, just to clarify, are you guys the ones that vote on the decisions, as the commissioners?
Correct.
And so that seems kind of cool, because you have, well, the commissioner, it's a government appointed position, you said, but it's also this, you said non-paid.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a non-paid position that, at the end of the day, you guys are all on team best opportunities for Pennsylvanians in the state of Pennsylvania, maximize those goals, maximize the opportunity, without probably a lot of influence outside of what your constituents, I guess I'll call them that, what the people in your district actually voice to you that they want one side or the other, which probably affects your vote. Obviously, weighed against the fact if you're sitting there on a wall that says, hey, where my back goes up against the wall is what's the best opportunity for people as a whole, regardless of what a few may think, which is kind of neat, I guess. So it is separate from, kind of some of those more, there's a lot of states that have things that are decided not with commissions like that it's very much what we'll call a politician, again, in air quotes, because that can mean different things, different places, but it's a politician making a decision that may or may not actually even be tied or have any relevant experience in that realm of the space. So I think it's kind of a cool system that you guys have. And I guess to that point, if you're a person calling, it seems like your impact might make a difference. And where I was going to, my next question was, I think there's a lot of people that, like you said, people don't call probably when things are going good. I'm exactly guilty of that. I don't think I've ever called a politician ever to say, hey, something's awesome. But I have called a handful of times about things that I didn't agree with, or maybe things I'd like to see changed or whatever. But the places I've done this has always been a politician you're talking to. So mixed bag of results there. But I think there's probably a people in my mind too, having gone through that experience, is does my voice actually matter? I know there's been some big flares in the world here recently in the outdoor space where people found out about some public land grabs that were coming down in some big omnibus bills, and thank God for social media in these cases, because people who do know and do pay attention and do have vested interest in these things can just spread that word like wildfire and then put out these movements for people to call and voice their opinions on something that maybe they wouldn't have. But do those phone calls make a difference, I guess is what I'll ask you. When you do hear from people, or those emails, do they land on your desk and make a difference in what you decide to do with the vote that you have?
Yeah, so I would say yes and no, right? Like there are people specifically in Pennsylvania that are single issue people that I hear from regularly, and I'm not on board with what it is that they want to see. I think they're looking at it through a very narrow lens, and I don't think that their desires of what they're asking for is in the best interest of hunting in the future. So if you ask those guys, they're going to say our voices don't matter, it falls on deaf ears, nobody listens, right? One of my favorite stories when I get asked that question, a few years ago, I got an email from a gentleman that said, how come waterfowl hunting is not included in your mentored youth program? I don't know. That's a really good question. So I went back and asked senior staff, I said, how come we don't have waterfowl hunting in our mentored youth program? And they were like, well, because nobody's going to want to buy their kid a duck stamp and a migratory bird stamp. And I was like, well, what if a guy wants to buy that for his kid? Like, if he's okay with incurring that expense and he has the setup to do it, why wouldn't we allow that opportunity? And they were like, I don't know. So in the next meeting, we put it on the agenda, and that's part of our mentor youth program in Pennsylvania now. And that directly came from a guy that said, how come we can't do this?
That's pretty amazing. And I kind of like the response even the board gave is like, nobody would want that. Well, like actually one person does.
Apparently.
And if one person, right, it may not dawn on somebody who's maybe not into that, right? But if that one person does, there's never an issue across all of humanity. And the Bible even says that, what's pretty much like whatever you struggle with is not uncommon to everybody. You're like, nobody suffers alone. Nobody goes through the same. You're all part of this human experience. Everything that you go through is the same for everybody else. But if one person cares about it, guaranteed there's a whole can of worms behind that other people care about it. Just maybe that voice hasn't been heard yet. Mm-hmm. So doesn't hurt to give those phone calls. However, there's opportunities that, like to your point, I think that's a lot of, we can get into a whole nother societal discussion on that one, but like everybody's got their own very narrow focus most of the time, right? If it doesn't matter to me, or if it's something I'm passionate about, and it doesn't change, or it does change, to me, I'm going to think maybe that was positive or negative. But at the end of the day, like what's best for the best amount of impact we can have for the state and the opportunities for everybody. And everybody's passions are different. Again, go back to the Facebook thing earlier, right? Like what matters to bow hunters doesn't matter to gun hunters, and vice versa. And they're going to be mad about it either way. So, yeah, I love that story. That's really cool because, when the response is, well, nobody's going to care about that. Well, it's like we literally got a phone call. So one person cares, which means more people care. And it was an issue that you're like, actually, why don't we do that? A head scratcher moment that just hadn't been thought of before. So if you got unique ideas or see something in your state and you have opportunities to call people like Kristen, but by all means do it. Pass those ideas up, because that's how things do get initiated sometimes.
Absolutely.
Similar, I guess, on kind of the similar note, Montana, when I moved there, I was working for a bow camera company, and for film or video recorder. Anyway, video devices were not allowed on firearms or archery equipment, or just archery equipment. I think you could do it on firearms. Anyway, but yeah, I went down to the local Fish and Wildlife office. I brought my camera in my hand and I said, hey, I read this in the regs. I just moved here. Like, here's this device. Here's how it works. Here's exactly how it mounts on my bow. I brought my bow with me. Just curious, is this actually not kosher, or because it kind of falls under this blanket statement here? And they all looked at it, and within that season, I think, and I'm not saying it was just me. I know there was other people that were doing phone calls and things like that, but just the opportunity to show something in person too, or bring an idea to really just explain hey, this is a niche thing that doesn't really affect the negative side. I know that you guys are probably trying to prevent here, but it also expands the opportunity for XYZ reasons. And that year they just wrote an exception. That's all they had to do is just review it, and it didn't have to change a law. They just wrote an exception in the regs and called it a day, and it literally changed within a season. So yeah, voices do matter. Just make sure you're putting it out there, and also be open-minded to the fact that your expectation and vision for what's going on in the outdoors world isn't the only vision or expectation that needs to be met. So yeah, good stuff there. Anything you want to share on the working for the NGO side? I know you've worked for a handful or had the opportunity to make impacts on a handful. What was your favorite thing you've had the chance to do in the NGO space besides maybe going on the hunts?
So I did a grassland restoration project on the Allegheny National Forest, and I remember my supervisor telling me, you got to find a way to get some media attention on this, kind of tell the story. And I looked at him and I said, nobody cares about grass growing. Like, nobody cares. How do we make people care about this, right? Because it was some native warm season grasses, there was some cool season, there was some invasive species control that we did. And as it turns out, one of my seed suppliers for that particular project was very involved with Pheasants Forever. And that tract of the Allegheny National Forest gets stocked with pheasants by the Pennsylvania Game Commission. So we kind of put our heads together. I said, can we host a veterans pheasant hunt out here? Like, I bet that would get some cameras out here. And we already stock pheasants, and I don't know anything about pheasant hunting, but it sounds like fun. Can you help me pull this off? And he goes, all the dogs and all the handlers you need, we'll bring them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we hosted a hunt there that first year. That hunt went on for 10 years. I left the organization I was working for, but there were enough people in place that community kept that event going on, and it's still going on today without me having anything to do with it. And also, that was the reason I ended up with the German short hair. So
that's pretty incredible, man. And you were a grassroots fire starter on that one. That's pretty neat. You just had an event idea and said, hey, what could draw eyes to what we're doing? And then bam, just let the community take it over. And there's a lot of power in that too. The ability to just take the ball and start something is a lot of times all it takes to get other people rallied behind the same cause. That's really neat. And then the German Short, are you upland hunter now, or is that more of a house dog?
Yeah,
or
unfortunately, she passed away here about a year ago. But now we have I'm surprised you haven't heard her in the background, but a 7-month-old puppy that's half short hair and half lab.
Okay.
So we haven't really hunted her yet. So I don't know if she's going to point or flush, but I don't really care. Like, I just want to go out and have fun, and not trying to win ribbons or plates or titles or anything. I just, want a dog that has an off switch in the house and has the prey drive in the field.
Heck yeah. No, I've got our lab. He's the same age as my oldest boy or a little younger by a few months. But anyway, he's going on 4. He doesn't have an off switch anywhere, and he's pure lab, but he's built like he's almost built like a bird dog. Like, he's got the real skinny waist and the big old hips on him, and he's just a firecracker 24/7. There's nothing I can do to get that dog to just chill. Like, he is just gunning. He comes from a shed line breeder, a shed hunting breeder, but I haven't got a chance to get him on. He's retrieved doves for me, and it was by a grace of God that I've gotten a couple back that he didn't chew all to hell before he got them back to me, pretty much. But so he's actually picking that up. He's gotten a little softer this year. We had the chance to get I think I got 3 doves this year, and he retrieved 2 of them and brought them back to me just fine. But so that the older dog aspect I think is coming in, but if you have an opportunity for a lab to have an off switch, I got one that does not, and I don't know how it happened, because I've never seen a lab that doesn't have an off switch, and this one just doesn't. So maybe he's mixed and I don't know it, but no, that's super cool. So you got into, with that being your first experience with upland hunting, and obviously getting an upland dog, did that kind of start a fire for you too? You became an upland hunter after that, or?
Yeah, I did. I started hunting pheasants a lot more. And when Warren moved to Pennsylvania, he moved with his dog as well. And at that point in time, it was a 6-month-old, half lab, half Rottweiler.
Okay.
So that was a terrorist with a tail, and that dog learned how to hunt pheasants from my short hair, and he will actually lock up on point and then flush the bird. So
Really?
it's a really unique kind of hunt. And so it'll, like I said, it'll be interesting. He's 8 now, so he's getting older. But if we can get out and get him on birds with this new pup, it'll be an interesting dynamic to see see how that shakes out.
That's pretty neat that he picked up and then to lock or lock up and flush. Because that's I bought a lab. I had a English setter, and the problem I had with her was keeping her within range. So she would point, but she was more gung ho just about running around, and so she would inevitably flush things if she had a hot wind. I went out hunting. I was doing things wrong as a hunter too, taking her in the wrong angle or whatever, just by a little bit. But for whatever reason, she seemed to flush birds, but she was always like hanging out 75, 80 yards outside shotgun range, and every now and then she'd point one. And then so I got a lab thinking, okay, I'm going to really get this dog locked in on pointing, and then I'm going to get this dog sticking with me, and she'll be my flusher. And the English setter, I had to end up letting her go. Gave her up to a different family that had just more space for my lifestyle at the time. Being that was when I was going to the first state of college at the time, so just too busy for that level of energy of a dog. And my lab stuck with me, and she was about perfect. She wouldn't go more than about 30 yards before she'd either stop and wait or just come back. She'd kind of make these big loops, and it didn't matter what happened. If she flushed them, they were well within range, and you had time to get a shot off usually, and that kind of thing. So her and I had a pretty good relationship with that. And then this dude, he's kind of a mix. Like he listens really, really well, and I can control him by voice really well. However, he has that like I want to sprint 200 yards ahead of you, and I know he won't point. Like that's just not even a question. So
Right.
I haven't got him bird hunting yet outside the dove situation, but dove he's like hanging out with me until we smack one, and then I'll let him go get it or whatever. And but waterfowl's another thing I need to get him out there and break the ice on. But yeah, it's interesting how dogs they all have their own little their range and their personality when it comes to bird hunting. It can be it's a game in itself. Kind of, it doesn't almost matter what they do if they point or flush, but there is a balance of how you need them to work to really make it effective.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
That's awesome. Well, very cool. And then I guess what's the toughest thing before we get into this deer story that I'm on the edge of my seat for? What are we? What's the toughest thing about? Well, I'll ask you two things. What's the toughest thing about being a business owner? Number one. And then number two, what was the toughest thing you ran into? Or maybe it's the game commission side now or the NGO side. But what's the toughest thing about that world?
I think the toughest thing about business owner is, and as you grow as a business owner, and get employees, you realize that somebody else is relying on you for their paycheck now, right? Like it's not just how are we going to get the revenue that we need to support our family, right? But there's other people relying on you to put food on their table as well. So that's the number one, like we can't fail at this because there are people relying on us.
Yeah, for sure. It's a big weight.
Yeah, yeah. So that'd be the weight from a business owner standpoint. From a commissioner standpoint, it depends on the day. Because like I said, man, you'll get ripped a new one by just about anybody for just about anything. And I think at the end of the day, just reminding myself that, man, hunters are passionate, right? And they're not necessarily attacking me personally, but they're passionate about something and they're trying to get their point across. Some people are way more effective at it than others, but that's human nature, and not necessarily taking things personally when they maybe could be taken that way. Especially if a headline hits the paper with your name on it, kind of calling your character into question. I don't like to see that, but that's part of the gig. And if I can look myself in the mirror and lay my head down on my pillow at night and say, hey, look, like my heart of hearts, I believe I made the right decisions for the right reasons, then those headlines will be what they'll be, and the phone calls will be what they'll be, and they'll ebb and flow just like everything else.
Yeah, 100%. No, I love that. And it's, there's definitely an art to being able to set aside the personal stuff when people are passionate on the other end of a phone or an email or
or a newspaper article. I haven't experienced that one yet, but I've been on the phone calls and email side of things that are tough just in business, I guess. And yeah, it's being able to navigate what the core is to whatever they're doing compared to the personal stuff that's coming out or the emotional side of things that's coming out. That's a skill, man. And you gotta practice it, I think, to get good at it. But it also, like, it's one of those skills too that I don't know if it matters how good you can handle it. Like, if you're in it enough and it's such a repetitive thing, it can almost get to the point where it'll wear anybody down. Everybody's kind of got their own kill switch on it. So, but yeah, definitely a good thing to shoulder. And I think, like you said, if you got that wall or you got your boundary up to where you stick your back against the wall and say, okay, I stuck up for what I thought was right and and again, have those core values and what's going to make the best impact for the most people. And you make those decisions. And then, like you said, not everybody's going to always be happy 100% of the time. And that's the reality. But right. Yeah, definitely a unique position to be in, like you said, where everybody's passionate for the right reasons at the end of the day. And it's not always the best decision to be made. So that's definitely unique. Very cool, man. Well, you got what got us on this podcast and reconnected here was a picture of you, and I've got it up in the background here. It looks like a snowy Pennsylvania hillside. I'm guessing Allegheny National Forest. I'm going to throw that out there. I've hunted that one time, but I see some faint hills in the background, snowy hillside, and you got a proud smile on your face with what I can only describe as a Pennsylvania buck. I'll throw it out there as that. It looks like a 7 or 8 point. I guess I want to hear this story, man. What led into it? What season was it? And walk us through the play-by-play.
Sure. So that was firearms deer season this year. And you mentioned that you have a lot of Pennsylvania hunters that listen to this. So Pennsylvania hunters are going to be keenly aware that we had some big legislation that went through recently that gave us as a board of commissioners authority to grant Sunday hunting. That's something we've been fighting for years and years and years. And the General Assembly finally came together, passed the bill. The governor signed it into law literally at the 11th hour. And we were scrambling going, man, how can we maximize opportunity for hunters this calendar year without really making people mad? Because there's also people that think Sunday hunting is a terrible idea. How do we balance this all out? So we ended up putting like 13 consecutive Sundays and added 13 consecutive Sundays of hunting opportunity in the 2025 year. Two of those were then in rifle season. In the second Sunday of rifle season, my husband and I were out, and oddly enough, I asked my son the night before, I said, hey, bud, I said, you want to go hunt tomorrow morning? He said, no, I'm going to sleep in. I was like, okay, just so you know, I'm going to go kill. I mean, of course, you got to trash talk a little bit, right? And
100%. Yeah.
And then you just got to hope that something pans out because you trash talked to your kid the night before. So this was some property we have in Warren County. And it, as that picture shows, there's a ravine and it's on a power line, hillside to hillside. And we'd invested in a long range rifle setup and spent some time at the range and, learned the whole dial the scope and shooting steel targets. And I mean, just a complete different aspect of hunting, right? There's an element of precision there when you're shooting hundreds of yards. And so we're sitting out there and it's obviously cold. The ground is white. And when you're on a power line like that, there's probably going to be some wind. Even when there's not wind, it's going to be windy. So we're sitting there and we're glassing the opposite hillside and some does come out. And it was one of those things of, do we take a doe? Do we not take a doe? That's a long shot. Do we want to go over there? Blah, blah, blah. And we're having this conversation back and forth, and we're looking through the binocs, and we're looking through the spotting scope. And all of a sudden, I picked up my binocs, and I look a little bit to the right, and I went, hey, there's a buck. And Warren's like, yep. And I'm looking at it again, and I'm like, it's a big buck. He's like, it is not a big buck. And I was like, well, it's a legal buck.
Yeah. Yep.
And so we're looking at it. And I looked at it through the spotting scope and I was like, all right, pull the scope cover off of that rifle. He's like, are you going to shoot that thing? And I was like, yeah, I think I am. He goes, okay. So, I mean, we had the gun on tripod, pulled the scope cover off, and I'm looking at it, and it's broadside. And I looked at Warren and I said, how far? He said 380 yards. And I was like, I got this. And the only reason I said I got this is because we've been there, we've done that at the range, you know?
Yep.
So I dialed the scope and squeezed the trigger and hit that deer. You know, it did the jump and run, and it ran, and it fell over before it hit the woods line dead. And I was like, yes, you know, like that's awesome. And we high-fived, and that was on a Sunday in rifle season. And of course, Warren, you know, he's like, I was not a monster deer. And I looked at him and I said, hey, we have been fighting for Sunday hunting in Pennsylvania for decades. And when the good Lord puts a legal buck in front of you on a Sunday morning, you cannot offend him by not taking the shot. So that's why I took the shot. So then we went over and, well, as we're standing there talking, some other does come up a little bit higher on the hillside. And of course, when you invest in a long range setup, then it's like who takes the longest shot, right? But you remaining ethical in the process. And I looked at him and I said, you're not going to take my long shot record away from me now, are you? He said, no. He said, let's go get your buck. So we went down and got a hold of that buck and, you know, took a look at where that shot went in and rolled that deer over. And as I rolled it over and was looking for the exit wound, the bullet was mushroomed and stuck in the hide on the opposite side. Like that, wow. The entire energy of that bullet stayed within that animal, and was just resting right there in the hide on the exit side, which was pretty cool too.
That's so cool, man. There's something to that story. My grandpa talked about that with his first buck, and I think that's why it resonates with me. I've never had that happen to me yet on a deer. I've found them actually I had a crazy one, but yeah, my grandpa, his was with a cap and ball musket, kind of, or a cap and ball muzzle loader, that he went and he shot a deer with, and he talks about the ball being just on the opposite side in the hide, and so that's always I wanted to see that sometime. But I've never actually had the chance to. What caliber were you shooting to where that bullet stayed inside there 380 yards?
It was a 6mm.
Okay. Read more? Or?
Plain old 6.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Very cool. And so it's super fast, super flat shooting, and we have a suppressor on it. And I'll tell you what, I never want to shoot a rifle without a suppressor ever again. You know, it's just... Yeah. When you can stay in the scope and you know watch that bullet. My daughter shot a deer 2 years ago now with it, and as soon as she shot, she goes, I watched that bullet hit. Right. So at that time she was 16, and a 16-year-old girl stayed in the scope and watched it hit. She knew it was a good hit, and talk about a major confidence booster.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. I'm right there with you. I got my suppressor last year or 2 years ago when we were in Maryland is when I got my first one. And I haven't had a chance to go hunting with it yet, but taking it even to the range, it's the same thing. It's just like, why would you ever not want to have that can on there now with it from a noise perspective, a recoil perspective, just all of it. You know, on my guns, I shoot off bags, so a little bit more jumpy. They'll still jump a little bit. And you kind of, depending on how far the shot is, sometimes you can land on there and see the bullet trace come in. But, you know, I'm shooting a 6.5 x 300 is my fast gun. And then I've got a 6.5 PRC, so it's still fast. But the 6.5 PRC is usually the one I'll end up watching that bullet arc in on at different ranges. But yeah, it's incredible. Now I've got the little guy with me, right? And he goes with me to the range, and you know, he brings his gun to hunt iguanas. It's like his favorite thing to watch ever is YouTube iguana hunting. So anyway, he brings that out there, and that's what he does. But just having that confidence too as a dad to know it's like, I'm not out here like, you know, as even a grown adult, man, like a gun goes off and you feel like oppression through your chest and all of it, like it'll make even an experienced shooter jumpy sometimes. So to have a little dude there that can sit in the chair behind me safely and also not get jumpy and not be nervous around the gun. It's just kind of a cool thing. And I have a lot more confidence just in that aspect. You know, number one as a shooter, because like you said, it's a lot more steady. There's a lot of benefits to it. But then, getting somebody into hunting, I can imagine just how much shorter that curve is going to be for him to get into shooting and shoot well. Because for me, my self-taught shooter, I guess. I grew up shooting 12 gauge slugs is where I got into deer hunting. And depending on the combo or ported barrel, not ported barrel, whatever, it's really, really loud and it has a good amount of recoil. So you just have to train yourself to deal with abuse to stay as steady as you can. That's actually where I started shooting off backpacks, because I noticed when I held guns, I inevitably flinched. So I forced myself to just take the punishment, but like just pull through the trigger and shoot a shotgun a little bit like a rifle, not knowing what I didn't know then, but it translates now is if you can deal with punishment, you can shoot any gun well. But to take all those punishment aspects away, I think it's only a benefit for everybody. Plus, it saves your hearing, and the deer act different too. When a suppressed rifle goes off, a lot of times there's an opportunity for a follow-on shot versus every deer in that area just busting the hillside and getting out of there. And you talked about does coming in after you'd already shot your buck. So I'm guessing there's probably an element to that too, where that softened noise going out in different, a broader area just helped that situation play out a little calmer. What's at the range? I got to ask you. I forgot you had mentioned that the long range shooting aspect at the beginning of the podcast. What's your longest shot you've put out in steel?
So the club that we go to has steel out to 500.
Okay. So
at some point, I'd like to go out past that, but I don't have a place to go out past that right now.
Yeah, the club I'm right here in Texas is 500 as well, and I try to get out there and stretch it out as much as I can. But I would, for you specifically, but anybody listening, I would highly recommend, if you shoot rifles, go to there's a ton of great ones. The ones I've been to are run by Outdoor Solutions. They also have kind of like Rolling Bones. They've got a similar like a portfolio of outfitters that they vet, and I don't know what the level of detail. I've never explored that side of what they do. But same thing, Lincoln Hunters Up with Reputable Outfitters is one part of their business, but they have a series of long range shooting schools that they do in several different states. So you can go out west to Utah. They may do one in Idaho, but Utah for sure. Texas, they have 2 or 3, and they've just opened a new one in Oklahoma. And they got a couple cool factors there. So one, they let you shoot out to 1,000 yards at their level 1 course. So I've completed that one. I did a little bit of like a modified custom course for some guys that earned a trip on a team program that I ran. I went with them there. We actually got to shoot out to a mile just as part of it was like a 3-day kind of a custom deal. But the cool part is they've got almost like a total archery challenge where they have like 3D targets, elk, bears, whatever animals you pretty much could think of. And they set them out in these giant ravines here in Texas. And it's all full elements. You get out there and it's like, hey, you shoot at the bench for day 1, day 2, get good. You shoot out to 1,000 yards, you build your confidence, and then you go out and play in the ball game where it's like, okay, now there's 20-mile-an-hour crosswind and you're shooting at a 50-degree angle downhill and yada, 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 yada. And you're shooting even, they have one shot that was really neat. They did a competition on where it's like, I don't know, line of sight, it's probably only 40, 50 yards, but it is like straight down below you and they make you freehand. Well, they pay attention to your fundamentals that day as you're like going through the stuff. So they'll notice if you haven't if you don't immediately get up and dial your scope back down to 0, right. Like the instructors are taking mental notes of your little quirks that you do. Yeah. And each person's situation is different, but all the guys or gals are standing back watching, and that instructor, while you're just dialed in on this target and he's got a timer going off, so you have a split second to do it, he'll like screw your scope up, or he'll make you shoot left-handed, or he'll throw your bolt in a weird direction, or he'll flip your safety on if you haven't been in the habit of flipping your safety on and off. Or so he's designed to screw you up. So it's a lot of fun. But yeah, that's if you ever want to go do that, there's some all over the country that I know about, but I've personally experienced Outdoor Solutions, and it's a really cool program. And they put you up for a few days and feed you in the whole 9. But yeah, it's neat. And the first thing they ask you when you go is, hey, I don't care what your experience is, introduce yourself to the group, and what's the longest shot you think you would take hunting. When I walked in, the first one I went to, I told them I think 200 yards. And at the time, my wife had actually made the longest shot that out of any of us. I think when we moved to Montana, she got her first deer, and it was 205 yards. And I thought that was just the coolest damn thing I'd ever seen, 205 yards. And she smoked it with a 270, and it was awesome. And then, I don't remember what mine was. Then I think she had the next longest was 280 that she did on her own. That's when we had the 6.5 300. And anyway, so I said 200 yards, but I'd never really shot anything past 200 just because, well, big Montana with rifles, like a lot of times you can just kind of navigate and get within a certain distance for the most part, unless you really want to stretch a gun out. But then by the end of it, for sure, my line I said was 400. And then I went the second time and I said 400 up front. And then by the time I left there, I think honestly about 700 would be about where I'd feel confident. But it's just building that skill, building that repetition and doing it over, even at 500, to what you're doing now. If you can shoot 500 consistently, no question you could get out to 700, because a lot of it is how much do you once you know the dial, or if you have an app that calculates most of that stuff for you and it's true to your gun, and you can get a box of factory ammo and it can say it shoots a certain speed, but it could be very well. I've seen it. I've had my box be off by more than 200 feet per second in a negative way, like slower than what it should have been shooting. That's factory ammo. So anyway, navigating that is really the hard part. But beyond that, it's the fundamentals, like talking about going back to, like we talked about, the indoor range, shooting a dime over and over and over with your bow at 20 yards. It's just building that repetitive skill, and then knowing the math or knowing the dial that you got to do to put it on target and making it happen. But 380 yards, that's pretty awesome. Is that your first deer, like long range with a rifle?
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
Heck yeah. That's so cool. So cool. Yeah. My longest right now is 415 on a mule deer. Nice. And it was one of those things, I think I could have got closer, but I'm like, I went to that course. I'm like, I gotta put my skills to the test. Like, he was broadside. He was calm in the bottom of a ravine, but the angle got me actually, which was funny. So I hit about 3-4 feet right over his back. It was perfect left and right, but high. And I was like, that's weird. He stood there, loaded another one, shot again, exact same spot. And now he got nervous. He went and he kind of jogged around and did a loop, but he went uphill and he stopped level with me. And I held the exact same hold. I'm like, I know I'm shooting the right hold. Mm-hmm. Hold the trigger, bang. The angle was what different. That's the only thing that changed, was the angle. So anyway, you learn something every time you get out there. But 380 yards on your first deer with a rifle, that's pretty sick.
So it's always good stuff, and it's good to get the kids out and watch them just experience something a little bit different. And like I said, I mean, you can archery hunt, you can rifle hunt, you can muzzleloader hunt, you can shotgun hunt. I mean, whatever, just go out there and be ethical and have fun.
Yeah, 100%. And I got to ask too, on the Sunday hunting. So this is a very special deer. You guys got this stuff passed. The hunters in Pennsylvania demanded it. You guys got it done, and you got this done on a Sunday hunt. So that's a huge high five. Mm-hmm. What's the biggest holdback to hunting on Sundays? When we moved to Virginia, it's a state where I think they had certain Sundays you could and certain Sundays you couldn't or something. It's the first time I'd never even thought about that until I read the reg book, and I was like, what? Like, you can't hunt on a Sunday? So what's the biggest argument against hunting on Sundays where people would call you and be mad about that?
So it's an old, what they referred to as blue laws in Pennsylvania. So you also cannot buy a car on a Sunday in Pennsylvania. I mean, just bizarre old laws that are on the books. And hunting was one of those. Now you can trap, you can fish, you can, go to a football game, whatever else on Sunday, but hunting was part of those blue laws. And there are people who think that, you need to be in church on Sunday morning and not in the woods, or the animals need a day of rest. I'm trying to let these people know 40, however many other states hunt on Sundays. Animals don't need a day of rest, but for whatever reason, that's in their mind that animals need a day of rest. And, there are guys that go, if you open up Sundays, I'm probably going to get divorced because I'm going to want to hunt and my wife's going to be mad at me. And I'm like, well, that sounds like a you problem, and maybe you should figure that out. But again, this provides opportunity. You can take it or leave it.
Yeah, well, 100%. And I don't know maybe if there's numbers on it or not, but I'd be curious too. Like, for a lot of guys, that the only times they get to go, if they're lucky, is on a weekend. And you take literally 50% of the hunting season away from them by 50% of the opportunity, I guess, away from being successful that season by just one day. It just seems a little odd, especially when you've got I don't know if Pennsylvania ever hits. If they've got quotas or how they manage that deer herd, but if they've ever come close to hitting that, for as many hunters as you have, obviously there's got to be a deer population to support that. And there's a ton of opportunity in Pennsylvania. I know that. So it's not a question of is the deer herd manageable, but I didn't know if it was something to do with that effect. If they thought the numbers were going to decline, maybe because of one extra day in the woods, if it was that effective. But if I'm a guy that hunts weekends, I'd be like, that kind of sucks, man. I can go like 3 times this year, and that's it. And I hope I'm lucky and get one.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, deer in Pennsylvania is probably more controversial than politics or religion. There's going to be guys that say there aren't enough deer. You're going to talk to a farmer that says, I lost $500,000 in revenue because of crop damage this year. Literally, I heard both ends of that a couple weeks ago at our January board meeting, and that's their realities. And when I first came on the board, there was another commissioner. He's since passed away, but he said it better than anyone else. And he said, look, deer are not like peanut butter, and you can't spread them evenly across the landscape.
Yeah. I think we just found the title of this podcast right there. Deer are not like peanut butter.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I'm going to take a note on that one real quick. That's a great way to describe it, though, because they're not evenly distributed. And any landscape that any animal lives in, they're not evenly distributed because there's a certain amount of habitat and it holds a certain amount of animals. And the next pocket over could be a few miles in some cases, or that guy's cornfield, man, he might have the one food source that's easy, for him with being a crop field for hundreds and hundreds of deer, and it just tears them up. You can't kill them fast enough. So that's wild. And I think it's super cool. You guys got that done, and Sunday you can hunt out there now. And the other thing I wanted to ask too, so you mentioned your buck's a legal buck, and he looks like a 7. Mm-hmm. I'll call it a Pennsylvania 7-point. When you get out west, you got to count everything by sides of the antler. So maybe right. does your husband call them different than you do?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So this is a 3x or a 4x3 or 3x4?
4x3 in his book, and I don't even know what that means in the whitetail world. So.
Exactly. Well, if it was a mule deer, you'd say it's a 4x3 with 2 double brow tines. Yeah. The whitetail would be a 4x3, and then but if you're I guess pretty much east of the Missouri River, you call them by the total number of points, and it has to be a 1/2 inch long, I think, is the general, or hold a ring on it or something in some states.
Right.
But so it looks like a Pennsylvania 7-point, a 4x3. If you're a Western guy listening, so you mentioned he was legal. What makes him legal where you were at?
So we have antler point restrictions in different parts of the state, and he needed 3 up in the area that I was hunting.
Okay. So just he could have a spike on one side and a branch antler on the other, and that would have been a legal buck?
So 3 up, like not including the brow tine.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So if he favored his 3-point side, he wouldn't have been a legal buck.
Correct.
But he had 3 on one side that are off the main beam. Okay. So G1, G2, G3.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Very cool. Well, I look at that picture. I'm like, that's just a flat out if I was going to hunt Pennsylvania, that'd be the buck I'm looking for. So I think it's pretty classic, and even better that it happened on a Sunday, and you were one of the people that helped the voice of the people get to where you guys can hunt Sundays there, which is even cooler. So I think that proud smile on your face in that picture goes even further now that I know the Sunday hunting aspect of that too. Yeah. That's very cool. Well, one thing I asked before we close it out here, if this has been awesome. I always ask every guest that comes on to leave us with something good. It can be whatever you want, but something you think the world needs to hear more of to make people better.
Ooh, that's a good one. Man, I wish hunters would take the me lens off and look at it from a more holistic standpoint, right? Instead of looking at an issue and saying, how does this affect me personally? Take a look at an issue and say, my feelings aside, what does this do for hunting and conservation in the future? And I think if everybody had the ability to do that, we would disagree a lot more respectfully with each other. And I think like that's the thing that's most disheartening to me, is that we tear each other down so much. And I mean, there are very well organized and well funded groups that do a good enough job of that on their own, that we don't need to do that to ourselves.
Yeah. No, 100%. I love that. And I think I like how you led that. Take the mean lens off. I think the more narrow your focus is on yourself, or what personally affects you personally, and less of, how does this affect the big picture? And again, kind of leaning back on what your guys' goal is on the commission. What's going to make the biggest impact for the most amount of hunters in the best possible way? If people could just, pull that me lens off or the mean lens off and say, hey, like, because I think when you do disagree, if you both had that same common ground of like, ultimately for the longest amount of our generations in the future, what's going to ultimately make if we put in almost an eternal focus on things, and how does this affect the major like long-term impact all the time? It's like, even if you do disagree, because most of the time you're probably going to disagree on those short-term decisions. I don't know how many of us will actually disagree on the long-term stuff, because if the goal is to have hunting around as long as possible and have sustainable game populations, maybe there's a few other elements to throw in there, but that's probably the core of it. Like, how do we do that? And then still go out and enjoy the resource now, because, you'll still get to. It's just a matter of like, how do you manage big picture versus small picture? But yeah, you definitely have to take that short-term and personal lens off to do that. I love that. That's awesome. Well, very cool. Well, is there anything else you've got for us, or any other places? So if they want to come find the game commission, or I don't want to necessarily have you put your phone number out there if you don't need to. If you're in District 1, I'm sure there's a public resource to find it, but where can people find like who their representative is in Pennsylvania for the Game Commission to contact you guys if they need to?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, our pictures, our contact info is all on the Pennsylvania Game Commission website. Folks can find me on Facebook. I'm pretty readily accessible in the social media world. I'll be at the Harrisburg Great Outdoor Show, and travel around to some of those trade shows and work the PGC booth and talk to a lot of hunters, in sportsmen's clubs and things like that.
Awesome. Very, very cool. And then if you need your house power washed or your fleet power washed or any awesome Christmas lights installed, copeservices.net.
Yeah, that's correct, man. We'd love to come make your house shine and light it up and keep your fleet clean and all that kind of stuff.
Heck yeah. That's awesome. And then recommended firearm sounds like the 6mm is your firearm of choice.
Hasn't let me down yet.
That's awesome. And of course, I hope you rubbed it in when you got home too, that your son didn't go and you smacked a buck on a Sunday at 380 yards.
As soon as I got to it.
That's awesome. This is what you missed out on here.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, Kristen, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great catching up with you again. And if you, when you get another deer or anything else you want to come on and talk about in the future, maybe we can dive deep on just a Pennsylvania issue one sometime or something in the future too. Love to have you back on.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. It's been a pleasure. And phone line's open anytime for you as well.
Heck yeah. Well, sounds good. Well, thank you so much, man. We'll talk to you later.
Yep.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
So there you have it, guys. That was Kristen Kopehafer, kind of a long tongue twister last name there. So sorry if I butchered it again, Kristen, but always good catching up with you, lady, and awesome buck. Congratulations on that awesome story. You've got me wanting to go out to Pennsylvania and shoot a buck in the hills or mountains of Pennsylvania. I've had the opportunity once to go up there and hunt with a buddy. Had an awesome hunt, had some cool stuff happen, a lot of laughs, and just really, really cool country if you've never been out to that part of the world, man. So congrats. And I've always got a soft spot in my heart for long range shooting as well. 380 yards, on that buck, man. That's no slouch shot. And congrats and good job getting a good rest and settling in and making the shot count, man. And you got a bunch of venison to put in the freezer. So congrats, Kristen, on that. Be sure to go check out copeservices.net as well if you need your house washed, your mobile fleet washed, or even some new Christmas lights installed. I love that she's got her own business going on since she stepped away from some of the other organizations full time and doing what she's doing now and being on that PA Game Commission, man. What an honor to serve the future and present of what it is to hunt in Pennsylvania and serve her fellow sportsmen, and especially serve the outdoors heritage that she is a huge part of and that she likes to enjoy herself. I think that's so amazing. So pat on the back, girl, for that. Again, that's so cool. So yeah, be sure to go check out that kind of stuff. If you have anything and you are from PA and you're listening to this and you've got some stuff you want to bring to the concern, go to the Game Commission website and you can actually look up her information there to contact her directly and make sure that your voice is heard. That's the best thing we can do. I like what she said for her something good, man. She goes, for hunters, we need to take the me lens off. I think 9 times out of 10, we're all so focused on our next hunt and exactly how it affects me, or maybe what a regulation affects me personally, or maybe just how the next hunter that went into the woods is going to affect your hunt, man. Like sometimes you just got to roll with the punches, and hunting is hunting, and take the opportunities you do have. Every state's got their own regulations. I think we can all agree that in today's information sharing age, that there's some awesome stuff that we are getting the chance to shine light on that maybe isn't so great. I know the corner crossing stuff in Montana currently is a hot topic, and hunters are finally having a chance to get their voices heard on some things that might be going on behind the scenes that benefit people that aren't the greater good and the greater public, and the things that Kristen talked about. But for the most part, the game commissions and all these places and DNR's services are there to make sure that we have healthy, North American wild game conservation model populations for us to get out there, chase, and have wild game in the fields, for us to all have opportunities to go out and enjoy. And so, yeah, man, take the me lens off, look at the big picture, and ask yourself, what does this do for the conservation and for the greater good of conservation in the future? Awesome words of wisdom. And yeah, man, I just really don't think she could have said that any better. And it really reminds me of Galatians 6, 9, and 10. And it says, so let's not get tired of doing what is good. At the right time, we'll reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. Therefore, whenever we have an opportunity, we should do good to everyone, especially those in the family of faith. She mentioned in there too that, we as hunters and fishermen have a great way of tearing each other down if it doesn't, quote unquote, look great, or isn't the way we would do it or the way I would do it. A lot of times you're finding yourself in the comment section ripping up somebody else's hunt or ripping up somebody else's fish or whatever the case is, man. And it's just kind of an ugly place to be. And it's wild because we are all the same people that if we were going up and all needed to get our voices heard, we'd all want the same thing: more opportunities to hunt, more opportunities to fish, more opportunities to enjoy the wild places we have. And instead we spend so much time behind a computer screen and just rip each other up for literally no reason. But it's because we all look through the lens of, selfishness and what would I do, or what do I think is right? I know better than you do. When in reality, and I think we should look at it from the, Dr. John Deloney. If you haven't checked out his stuff, go check it out. It's some awesome stuff, and I think it would make everybody a little bit more introspective when it comes to life. I love his podcast, but the Dr. John Deloney show. But he says it all the time. It's do the next right thing, and I think if you're gonna walk into the woods and you see another car parked at the trailhead, do the next right thing. Or if you see that dude that shot a buck maybe and it's not the size that you thought it should be, do the next right thing. Either keep scrolling or maybe post a positive comment this time, or really do the next best thing and put your voice out there for people, places like the Game Commission here in Pennsylvania, and get a group of your hunting buddies together that all are like-minded. Go to a bar, grab a pint, talk about what you wish the hunting stuff would look like in your state, and then go take it to the next commission meeting or go take it to the next DNR meeting, man. That's how you get things done. We got to realize that we all have more in common than we do not in common. And that's, again, what this Prayin and Slayin community is all about, man. It's just realizing we're all human. We're all here to serve God, and we're all here to serve our purpose here on earth. And it's a very short time. So the more time we spend dinking around, tearing each other up, or being selfish, or looking at everything through a me lens, we're going to miss so much more and so much more opportunity than we are if we look at everything for the greater good of what we want to serve and what God created here, and how can we get it as close to intentionally designed as possible, which means unlimited hunting opportunities for everybody, baby. So let's go out there and chase that. Kristen, man, congrats again on an awesome buck. Again, I'm fired up. I can't wait to get out into the field this fall and maybe into some hills and some new country here in Alabama, and maybe get myself a long range shot. So with that, guys, go do something good for somebody today. And I'm going to leave you with that. So as always, keep praying and slaying.